What really happened in those final moments of Jim Reeves' life? On July 31st, 1964, Jim Reeves, the man who brought velvet tones to country music, boarded a small plane. But why did a singer of his stature choose to fly himself rather than taking a commercial flight? The answer lies in his independence, his love of flying, and his desire to control his own schedule. For Reeves, flying wasn't just convenience, it was freedom. Yet that freedom would also become the reason for his untimely death. Who was with him on that fateful day? Sitting next to Reeves in the cockpit was his trusted pianist and business partner, Dean Manuel. Together, they had traveled many times, chasing music, chasing business, chasing life. They weren't just colleagues, they were like brothers. And as they took off from Batesville, Arkansas, they had no idea that the skies above Nashville would become the stage of their final chapter. What went wrong during the flight? The weather that day was cruel. Low clouds, heavy rain, and poor visibility. For an experienced pilot like Reeves, who had logged many hours in the cockpit, these conditions were dangerous but not entirely unfamiliar. Still, the storm over Tennessee grew fierce. Thunder cracked, winds whipped, and raindrops smacked against the plane's windshield like bullets. Reeves tried to remain calm, but in truth, the storm was stronger than his skill. Did Jim Reeves realize the danger before it was too late? Yes. Witnesses later reported hearing the engine sputtering and the plane flying alarmingly low. Reeves radioed air traffic control, his voice steady but urgent, asking for guidance through the storm. Imagine that moment. His hands gripping the controls, sweat forming on his forehead, Dean Manuel glancing at him with silent trust, both men hoping for a miracle. Reeves was known for his smooth, confident voice, but in that cockpit, it carried a weight of fear. How did the crash unfold? Just miles from Nashville, so close to safety, the storm forced the small Beechcraft aircraft downward. Trees rose like walls out of the mist, and Reeves fought desperately to climb. But the storm was relentless. The plane struck the woods, the sound shattering the stillness of the countryside. For Reeves and Manuel, there was no time, no chance for survival. Their lives ended in a heartbeat. How was the world affected by his sudden death? The news spread like wildfire. Fans, family, and fellow musicians were stunned. Jim Reeves wasn't just another country star. He was the voice of comfort, of romance, of hope. His death was a dagger to the heart of country music. The radio stations, which had so often played "He'll Have to Go" and "Welcome to My World," now played them as elegies. What about his legacy? Did it fade with the crash? Quite the opposite. His widow, Mary Reeves, worked tirelessly to preserve his recordings, releasing posthumous albums that touched millions. His voice continued to soothe broken hearts, to fill lonely nights, to stand as a symbol of what country music could be, gentle, tender, yet timeless. Do people still remember his last flight today? Yes, and not just as a tragic accident. For many, it's a haunting reminder of how fragile life is. Reeves' death wasn't only about loss, it became a story of how art outlives the artist. The man who once sang about love and longing left the world too soon, but his songs remain immortal. So what were the last minutes of Jim Reeves truly like? They were a storm of fear, courage, and heartbreaking inevitability. A man who had given so much beauty to the world spent his last moments battling nature itself, trying to protect not only himself, but also his dearest friend beside him. And even in tragedy, his story reminds us that voices like his never die. They live on. In every song, every lyric, every memory.
Jim Reeves, nicknamed Gentleman Jim for his smooth, velvety voice, wasn't just another country singer. He was a legend in the making, a man whose ballads and gospel numbers touched millions of hearts across the world. Songs like He'll Have to Go and Welcome to My World turned him into an international icon. Yet behind all the fame and the calm image, fate was about to cut short his journey in one of the most tragic and terrifying ways imaginable. On July 31, 1964, Reeves, just 40 years old, boarded his private Beechcraft Debonair airplane in Arkansas. He was not only the singer loved by millions, but also a licensed pilot who had flown many times before. That day, he and his pianist, Dean Manuel, were returning to Nashville after conducting some business. The skies, however, were not friendly. Heavy thunderstorms rolled across the south, creating a dangerous environment for small private planes. Still, Reeves, confident in his skills, he believed he could make it through. As Reeves piloted the aircraft, radio transmissions later revealed his calm but strained voice contacting air traffic control. Controllers advised him of poor visibility and worsening weather conditions. Reeves acknowledged the warning, but his words carried the chilling undertone of someone battling both nature and time. Witnesses later described the weather as suffocatingly thick, with sheets of rain reducing visibility to near zero. Somewhere over Tennessee, Reeves' small plane was swallowed by that storm. In those final minutes, turbulence tossed the craft violently. The engines roared against the buffeting winds, and Reeves struggled to maintain altitude. Imagine the terror inside that cockpit. Lightning flashing around them, rain hammering the windshield, instruments flickering as the storm disrupted radio communication. Reeves, the calm performer who once soothed audiences with gentle melodies, now faced nature's full, merciless force. It is believed that Reeves became disoriented, a deadly trap pilots call spatial disorientation. With clouds so thick, the horizon disappeared, and human senses often trick the mind into thinking the plane is level when it's actually banking fatally. Reeves' final transmission was cut short. A chilling silence replaced his steady, determined voice. The Beechcraft Debonair never made it to Nashville. Somewhere outside the city, the aircraft plummeted into the wooded countryside. The impact was violent, tearing the plane apart and leaving no chance for survival. Reeves and Manuel were killed instantly, but what made the tragedy even more haunting was what followed. For nearly 2 days, no one could find them. Search parties scoured the Tennessee countryside, helicopters flying overhead while fans and locals prayed for a miracle. Reeves' wife, Mary, clung to hope, refusing to accept that her husband might be gone. Finally, on August 2, 1964, the wreckage was discovered. Scattered among the dense trees were the broken remains of the aircraft, silent proof of the storm's fury. The news spread like wildfire. Jim Reeves was dead. Fans across the globe were devastated. Reeves wasn't just popular in the United States, he had a massive following in Europe, Africa, and beyond. His voice had crossed borders, and so did the grief of his passing. Radio stations played his songs non-stop, tributes poured in, and tears flowed from those who had found comfort in his music. What struck most people was the cruel irony. Reeves, who sang with unmatched serenity, had died in a moment of chaos and terror, battling the skies themselves. His gentleman persona contrasted sharply with the horrifying reality of his last moments, trapped inside a storm, fighting to survive, but ultimately consumed by it. Even in death, Reeves's influence only grew. Posthumous releases of his recordings kept his memory alive for decades. His wife, Mary Reeves, worked tirelessly to preserve his legacy, ensuring new generations would know the man whose voice once calmed storms in people's hearts, even though he lost his own battle with one. Jim Reeves' last moments remind us of the fragility of life and how quickly it can all be taken away. He faced the storm with courage, but nature showed no mercy. His final flight remains one of country music's darkest days, a tragic story of talent and promise cut short in the most terrifying way.